Catapulting Commissions family. What's up, team? Welcome back to this week's episode of the Catapulting Commissions podcast. I'm your host, Anthony Garcia. So here's the deal, guys. We have been running this show for 3 years long, 3 years strong, and the guests continue to deliver more and more value. Today's guest, let me just share with you the bio of today's guest, give you some insight on who we're speaking to. And if you are a high-performing sales professional or you've always had this idea of how do these startups scale and grow, you're going to want to listen to this show today. Evan Chrapko started the company Trust Science with his brother Shane. He is a serial entrepreneur and investor, having served as a CEO or advisor for numerous innovative startups, including Flow Networks, which was acquired by DoubleClick for $80 million. He followed that up by developing Plate Spin, which was acquired by Novell for $205 million. Prior to Trust Science, Evan and his brother founded and within 30 months sold a cloud storage pioneer DocSpace for $568 million. So when I say we found some of the best in this startup space, the numbers speak for themselves. Evan's a CPA. He's an attorney with a degree from Columbia University. He is a Henry Crown Fellow and a member of YPO and has been named to the Real Leaders Global 100, along other names you may know as Bill Gates, Richard Branson, and Elon Musk. And I'm extremely proud, excited, and humbled. Evan, welcome to Catapulting Commissions.
Hey, Anthony, thanks.
Absolutely.
Happy to be here.
Glad to have you here. So, Evan, let's start with the simples here. Trust Science is the fourth adventure you've been on. I mean, you're as a serial entrepreneur, we listed 3 that have gone well. I'm assuming there's some that may have not gone well, but give us a little background on your entrepreneur journey and bring us up to speed about what Trust Science is, who you serve, and the problem you're solving in the market.
Yeah, no, there's definitely been failures along the way, and the cliche, but it's true, as you learn more from those. The successes have allowed me to do Trust Science, and it was the origin story there was after having been betrayed by 3 different business partners in different incidents over the years. I thought maybe I give out my trust too readily. I'm too trusting, and is there a way to get my gut out of the equation? And being a technology commercialization guy, is there a way to do that with tech? And at the time, big data and AI were not yet very well understood, except for in the movies, and it was all scary stuff. So I put this together over a space of time that involved and required breaking through a lot of difficult technology answers or solutions to some pretty tough problems with data and AI. And we have now 45 different patents around the world in multiple countries. So that's a testament to my team and their inventiveness and smarts. The science of trustworthiness is really, it's predicting what a human being is going to do. So we've built this as a platform, very generic that way, no limitation on the use cases. However, rule of thumb number 1 in technology commercialization is you really do, A, you do want to build a global platform that's generic, but B, when you go to market, you want to be hyper narrowly laser focused. So the opposite. The generic and global piece gives you optionality and lets you pivot into other things if what you picked didn't work. And what we've picked and are working really hard, the hyper narrowly laser focused piece of this is going to assessing people for whether or not they will repay their loans. So you give them money, will they give it back? That's the basic question. We're even more narrow than that in not going for all lenders. It's directed to lenders who are serving the underserved community or the financially excluded and marginalized consumer borrower. So my customers are consumer finance companies or the enlightened lender household names who want to help the underprivileged.
Well, one, so much to peel back there. Thank you for acknowledging and admitting you've had failures, right? Nobody comes on this show and is like, oh, I was perfect. I scaled. I've grown. Everyone shares they failed. So Catapulting Commissions family, I bring that up on every guest because I want you to know we've all failed numerous times. We just keep getting back up. So if that's you, it's okay. Number 2, this I like how you said, right? You start with the global, then you go with like this laser focus. And I want to piggyback on that in a quick second because I know within my own consulting business, when I have that conversation with clients, I always get the same, I get the same rebuttal. And I'm going to bring it up to you, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. But let's talk a little bit more in depth on trust science. So you're predicting human behavior when it comes to lending money. How is this different? And this may be forgive me for not understanding. How is this different than the traditional credit bureaus that say, if you're a personal bank, if you're a personal loan, they look at your credit score. If they're looking at your corporate credit score from a business owner, if they're looking at a PG for something. I mean, there's all these credit bureaus that say you're worthy to invest money, you're worthy to be a startup, whatever it is. How is this different?
The difference here is the platform nature and being able to harness in a lot more alternative data sources. So the big guys, my multi-billion-dollar competitors, are like FICO or Equifax and TransUnion, Experian. They are looking at data that's easy to get, or they're looking at data that their customers, the lenders, are giving them. So they're the furnishing or the reporting that happens on you that you agreed to, whether you know it or not. It's in the fine print when you took the loan. You agreed that your bank or your credit card issuer is going to tell on you every month for the rest of your life or the rest of your relationship. They report to the bureaus, and our customers do the same thing with us as well. The difference with us is that we're also looking at a lot of other information, unconventional. It has to be compliant, so there's a big, huge barrier to entry here, where the FCRA and the CFPB and other government, federal, and state jurisdictions, they have a lot to say about consumer protection and anti-bias and fairness and so on. So I have a big hurdle to crawl to clear in making sure I'm doing this in a legal way. But the data is one aspect of it, and the methods that we're using, the AI and being pure about machine learning and not cheating, not going to scorecards or not going to linear regression, which is the old style of doing this kind of work. It allows me to accurately score people who don't have a lot of data. It allows me to properly score people whose data might seem on the surface like it's conflicting. And it even lets me score people who don't have a credit history. That's the big one. It's the new to country or new to credit young people. So it's the bringing together of a lot of computing power and methods that up until recently were not that accessible, and harnessing them or training them onto a big, huge economic problem, because the credit scores are everybody's on-ramp into the modern economy. And when that's not being done well, that if it's not being done well, that should be criminal, because what ends up happening is people end up getting hurt or marginalized further.
Yeah, it's almost as if the technology trust science comes in is disrupting what I feel, and this is in my understanding only as a consumer, personal credit, corporate credit. That is my extent. Um, but it's always I feel like it's an automated decision. Like it's just here's my info, here's my social, here's my DUNS number, here's my EIN. Oh, you want to see my bank statements and tax records? Here it is. And some way, shape, form, or another, it's just an automated decision. If it works out great, no one told me why they said yes. If I was told no, it's usually some simple generic response. But with these decisions being automated, and you are the best expert I know to answer this question here. If the traditional lenders are making these decisions in an automated fashion, aren't these financial institutions making some mistakes along the way? And if so, like what mistakes are they making? And you said the impact for us is catastrophic, because I definitely think uh, the result of bad lending we've all seen. We've been around long enough, but are there some key mistakes big institutions are making when they have these automated decisions?
Yeah, absolutely. So no system is perfect, but what you want to do is reduce the false negatives and reduce the false positives. So the false negatives are you're a bad risk, whereas in fact you would rather lose your left arm than welch on a debt. The false positives are, you get some money, but really you never intended to repay the money. That just makes it worse for everybody, because that lender, who is not a charity, he's losing the principal amount of the money, right? And has to charge a higher interest rate to all the other customers. So it's the twin falses, or the two false aspects, false positives and false negatives, are what you're looking at reducing. So just because I show up, I'm not automatically raising everybody's credit score by X number of points. We have to accurately and properly score the whole population. That's the issue, and it's there may be people who are not deserving, that shouldn't be getting the funding, that you want to also prevent, because that's the the fraud, or the con artist types, or the false identity stuff that goes on. You need to be able to block that too, or detect that, just as importantly as you need to be able to assess someone who is worthy.
It's fascinating to me that we have found, and I guess I'm not shocked based on your background here, Bob. I'm not shocked that we found a traditional market that needed to be disruptive, and you created that disruption. So kudos to you for the growth of your company, Catapulting Commissions Family. Go to trustscience.com. You can check out Evan's company and see how he's changing what for most of us has been just a traditional network. And if you're not in that space, you don't really look into it into tons of detail, but we all can agree and appreciate that we, as a human society, we are continuing to grow because we continue to disrupt old, antiquated technology that was always the way it was, and we're bringing new data and new insights. So congratulations on that. Now, Evan, I want to piggyback something. Now, let's talk a little bit about the growth of the organization. You've done this numerous times where you've scaled companies, you've grown companies. You shared a little while ago that you came to market this wide, like open, big company, but you were hyper focused. And when the phrase you used was hyper narrow focused, to be exact, on how you were going to break into that market. When companies are in this stage, startup companies that are wanting to grow and scale, and we have conversations, and I've had them with clients and prospective clients, and said, hey, how are we going to break through? Like, how are we going to become known? Like, what is the 100%, this is all I'm going to do? And I always get the FOMO, right? But what about this other market? It's like that entrepreneur's dilemma. Like, I can serve everybody, and that's just bullshit. It's not reality. So how did you and your brother and your co-founder, how did you guys decide what lane you were going to be hyper narrow focused in? And once you made that decision, how did you stick to it?
Yeah, great question. We actually brainstormed a bunch of the different industries or use cases, ranging from law enforcement, homeland security, through online dating, or making better matches on Airbnb or Uber and that kind of thing. The fact of us being AI based had an issue in that you need to get data down to zeros and ones. And so in some of those use cases, it would require analyzing, grainy video, or in other use cases, unstructured text, and in others, different languages and so on, or images and pictures. And so getting down to zeros and ones for the benefit of the AI was easiest in a numbers-based industry. And so lending, insurance underwriting too, but that's even a little further away from dollars and cents. So numbers are already halfway through to zeros and ones. The other thing about AI is that it needs training. It needs to be trained or to learn. And so you need to feed it both good outcomes and bad outcomes. So you can get into lots of funny conversations over drinks about what's a good or a bad outcome in, say, a hiring or in an online dating environment. In lending, it's very, very clear. It's, the money is repaid as agreed, or it's not, or it's late paid, or it's paid on time. And so the features of the industry lent themselves well to the platform that we had. Then we brought in representatives or people from those industries, call it like not so much panels or focus groups, but individuals who could talk to each of those different industries and interviewed them essentially around what we had and what we were thinking. And it became very clear through that exercise that the lenders were in a lot of pain. They were these falses that I mentioned, false positives and false negatives, especially for the bottom half of the economy, where the big credit bureaus do not do a very good job. That was ripe for being fixed and solving a lot of pain. And the company's mission all the way along is to allow deserving people to get what they deserve. So it was on mission. It was very measurable and clear in terms of being addressable with the technology. So those were that's what made lending to the down market, that's what made that industry or subsector obvious to us. And then the other half of your question is, how do you stick to it? Well, it was hard, because even within that, there are more delineations. So you can do automobile lending, which we are experts at. We can do installment unsecured consumer lending, which we are experts at doing. But then what about mortgages? What about credit cards, student debt, buy now, pay later? The list is very long. Your recreational vehicles and other things. We just, it's been hard, but sticking to those two and putting them up on our website kind of helped us. It was a bit of a guardrail, so that if someone came in with, will you help me score students for student loans, we could say, well, yes, but we'll do that later. We first have to stick our landing in this subsector of, down market or subprime automobile and installment lending.
Hearing this journey, it's fascinating, right? Catapulting Commissions family. I mean, you're hearing the insights behind the development of a scaling organization, not by someone who's brand new to this. Evan has scaled numerous companies and has exited for handsome rewards. You hear him in the simplest, purest form, you did the research, you committed, you identified, and you truly said, okay, here's our lane. This is the one lane we're going to excel in. Doing that research, Evan, how long, just time-wise, did it take you guys to do the research to say, hey, here's what we were going to commit to?
Yeah, that was long. Like, that was where the stomach for doing this and the staying power was necessary. It's measured in our case in years, and maybe that's because I'm slow learner or whatever. But truthfully, some of that was because we were too early in the game. There is such a thing in technology commercialization where when you're ahead of the market, and the signals for that are there's no purchase orders. So rule of thumb number one is build something as global and as generic as you can as a platform, before then rule thumb number two, get hyper narrowly laser focused on your go-to-market. But rule of thumb number three is that there is no money in education. So even if after you've done all that to the best of your ability, you're getting meetings but no orders, meetings but no purchase orders, or you can't send an invoice, then all that's happening is that you are educating the market. That is a really bad place to be. And that's rule of thumb number three. There's no money in education when you're trying to commercialize technology. Stop. Find a better, more amenable market. Or if you have the capacity, what we did was we stopped bleeding on the outbound sales and marketing, doubled down on the hard technology problems we were solving, applied for all those patents that I mentioned, and then re-emerged, like came out of stealth mode later when the world or the market had caught up to what we were doing. Because at the beginning, there was a lot of joking around about HAL and Skynet and when are my Terminator robots going to take over the world? Because to their defense, what people knew about AI at that time came from the movies, and it was scary. And so when we went into stealth mode or got off the grid and came back later, in the meantime, the world caught up to the fact that AI is a real thing, and it can be applied in real world business solutions or problems. So that was the answer to your question is that it took a period measured in some number of years, single digit years, not 20 years or anything like that, but it was not easy. And it definitely drew on every ounce of commitment to the mission and having the team members around you who saw it the same way you did, because you face a lot of skepticism, and both from friends and well-meaning, relatives who are looking out for your best interests and wondering if you've totally lost it, but equally being in touch with the market and taking their healthy skepticism in a positive direction, meaning learn from it and address it. Don't hide from their skepticism, or don't poo-poo it. Address it with your technology, and then when they start to see it in action, or when they start to see their competitors using you, a switch flips, and you're into a different mode of operating after that.
It's so enlightening to hear you break this down, because it's 100% true. The research, the time you spent to uncover this, I'm glad you share that. I wish more founders would truly gain that understanding, like, hey, what's this lane I'm going to go into? But even more so, you came from an analytical approach, and you said, there is no money in education. And we're going to have to share that over and over again, because I literally tell my clients, if your sales force is spending more time educating on the problem you're trying to solve, your problem is not big enough for someone to want to pay for it just yet. And you know that is universally applicable across all industries. Like, if you really think about it, if we have to educate the problem we're solving, is it really a problem? So to hear it at the scale you're talking about, and to some of you listeners just hearing that within your own small business, ask yourself that question. So I love that. Evan, as we pivot here, we have a few minutes here. I want to talk about the sales process for your company. What is the process look like for generating revenue for your company? Because you're in a startup. You mentioned your competitors, which are conglomerates. So I always look at, when startups come and they try to disrupt technology, how does that sales process look like? Like, where is your team spending time? Who is doing the sales, and what does that look like?
Right. So obviously at the beginning, that starts with the founder,
Mhm.
often the best salesperson. Initially, you want to do a couple of things. One is, there's such a thing as a bad customer, or a customer who's not the right customer for you right now. So in the initial days, the early adopters are worth more than their weight in gold. Even if on other measures they might not seem ideal, the fact that they're willing to work with you and give you the ingredients, which could be as simple as feedback, that you need. In our case, we also needed back then data. Anyone willing to cooperate like that, because they themselves wanted to be at the leading edge of their industry. In my case, the lenders wanted to be the leading lenders. That's golden. So pick your customer as part of it, or your prospect. The other part of it is, start high. If you are doing something that's disruptive, or you're dramatically expanding on a pre-existing category, then by definition, you kind of have to be at the board of directors level, or where the mandate is to be strategic. The CEO and other C-level officers should also be thinking strategically, obviously, but if you can find a board of directors member to introduce you to the executive suite, then you're dealing with a company that's probably wired for what you need them to be in their their own DNA as the way they want to operate or be modern or themselves be a disruptor in their industry if that's what you're helping them to do. So it's a top down approach for sure. You also end up that way enjoying, after you've succeeded with them, the strength of the reference that you get from them as an account is much more impactful. So you can go to our website and see letters on their letterhead from the CEOs of those companies, not someone 4 or 5 levels removed. You're seeing the CEO of my customer saying Trust Science knows what it's doing. They've been transformative. They've been easy to work with, and they've helped us make more money, or they've helped us to help our borrowers. That kind of thing. It means a lot more, let's say, coming from a C-level officer or board of directors member than it would be coming from, a branch manager of, one of their 500 branches. And then the other thing I would say is be transparent. They're going to find out. You can't trick them into buying, or if you trick them into buying, it may end up being a waste of everybody's time and money, especially your own, if that doesn't end up being a good fit. So be transparent. And that sounds hard, or it is hard, when you're not perfect and all built out and got a brand, Fortune 500 logo behind you. You're showing, you're transparently divulging your weaknesses. Hardest thing to do, and not very many. I would say not very many of the poor salespeople know how to do that. They would rather spew, show up and throw up and just yak about features and exaggerate capabilities and so on. Not the right answer, not the right approach. You're going to betray their trust of the buyer. They will find out anyway. That really glowing reference that I was talking about doesn't come because they feel that they've been taken advantage of. So it's those two things: come from the top with early adopters and be transparent, and that ends up meshing really well, because then they'll be transparent back to you and they'll tell you what problems they're trying to solve, and you'll learn something about your own technology roadmap and where it needs to meet them, at some point in the future, if it's not already there. Those are the two big themes, I would say.
I hear it. I love it, because it is when people come and work in startups and they try to drive and generate revenue. Like, there's no secret, there's no masking. You're a startup, you're a small guy. You're gonna have, you don't have all the bells and whistles that the big guys have just yet, right? And maybe you have some funding, maybe you don't, but truth be told, you don't have that brand equity, that brand recognition. So I look at sales professionals that come from some of these big companies, right? Salesforce.com, Oracle.com, and they have this credibility, right? They speak with the company. They're like, oh my goodness, you're the conglomerate in your space. I know who you are, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. They come to work for a small company, and it truly becomes, in my opinion, the sales process becomes an act of service. Like, it really is. I have to truly develop an authentic, engaging relationship. And that authentic relationship is saying we are a startup, not in so many words, but truly acknowledging where we're coming, what we're doing. And the way startups scale is they out deliver the value the big guys forgot. Just point blank, 100%. I'm going to out deliver the value that the big guys forgot. And the more I out deliver the value, the faster I grow. So, Evan, last thing here, your company's growing, and you said, obviously you were salesperson one, but as you grow and you scale, do you currently have, are you building a sales team? Do you looking for a sales team? Like, you're growing at such a phenomenal rate that the sales team has to be growing. What does that process look like right now? Or what is that situation for your company?
Yeah, we're always on the lookout for those unicorns that can handle the chaos and the lack of resources and the some of the aspects of what we have being nebulous, or there's still a roadmap of our technology that hasn't been built, and we have embryonic aspects of a lot of things in place. That's not everybody's cup of tea, and you named it, the big Fortune 50 or Fortune 500 logos, the people who carry those business cards. They're accustomed to a ton of support, a ton of process, ton of resources, and the brand, just the brand. No one ever got fired for buying IBM, that kind of thing. So when you're asking an enterprise, especially a conservative enterprise, all lenders are conservative, to take a look at you as something they've never seen before, and you're challenging multi-billion-dollar, well-understood competitors. There's a certain level of engagement there, or requirement on the people or the team members that I'm looking to hire. There's a self-confidence piece that allows you to be transparent without feeling like you have to hoodwink anyone. There's a technology awareness and knowledge. You actually have to know something about what we're doing under the hood, and I don't mean credit scoring per se. I mean the technical infrastructure that we are using, because you will be asked about it, you will be challenged on it. And if you're not credible, or you can't talk to it, then the buyer, the series of buyers in the company, in the prospect, start to lose confidence in you or your solution. They are reading into your behavior as to, do you actually care about them and their problems, and do you actually know enough about what you're representing to map it into their organization? If they feel like that's missing, either of those two things, the empathy and the technical know-how, they're not going to want to put their careers or their decision making on the line. They don't want to be judged wrongly or poorly because they went with you, who didn't really know what you were talking about. It's just, there's a lot there. So yes, we're looking for those kinds of unicorn folks, or management caliber people who know how to handle a region or a territory in either credit. If you have domain expertise, that's also pretty important. No matter what career or what kind of selling you're doing, have that domain expertise in credit, or also in our case, lead sourcing and lead screening, to find the consumer who will be a borrower. We sell both of those kinds of assessment services: lead generation, lead sourcing and screening, as well as assessing the loan applicants. If that's in someone's background and they've demonstrated an ability to do that in a startup that grows quickly, we had 13x year-over-year top line growth last year. It's not for the faint of heart, but yeah, they're out there.
Awesome. Well, I will say this. Evan Chrapko of Trust Science, I believe that sales unicorn is listening to this show right now. So Catapulting Commissions family, if that's you and you fit that description and you think you may have the chops to get into to really the startup space, 13x. I mean, that sounds so exciting. People don't realize 13x is also a shit ton of work. So it comes and goes both ways, and there's no guarantees, but I love what you shared. Evan, how does the Catapulting Commissions family, if they want to explore more about that opportunity or learn more about Trust Science, how do they get a hold and track you down or find you or learn about you? What's the socials or URLs and all that fun stuff?
Sure. Trust Science, the website, to first see whether or not you know what we're in the middle of, because that would be important, is trustscience.com, just the way it sounds. My email address is first and last name, no punctuation, at trustscience.com. Imagine that's spelled somewhere
Yes,
on
sir.
your material. And then, yeah, if anyone wants to, I'm very open or transparent. My phone number is 403-585-3826. That's a good way to get straight through to me. And yeah, or talk to some of our customers. We proudly put their logos, if you know any of them, or you know anyone at those customers that you want to get some intel on us from, go ahead, start there, because they will all tell you a really, really happy story, and then you can figure out if it's for you or not.
Awesome. Well, Evan Chrapko, trustscience.com, and that you shared his phone number, Evan Chrapko. If you're audio only listening, it's Evan, EVA, Chrapko, CHRAPKO, at trustscience.com. You will find those links in the show notes. So if you're listening, can't find it, don't worry about it. Click that little button that says show notes. You'll pop up. All those links will be there for you to get connected. Evan Chrapko of Trust Science, please, thank you for joining the Catapulting Commission Show. We wish you nothing but abundant success. And 13x is phenomenal. I mean, I'm like, my bones got excited when you share that, because as a sales enthusiast myself, specifically in this space where you see the startups growing, that just excites me because I know all the work it takes to get there. So congratulations, my friend. You've had 3 successful ventures that we've shared today in your previous organizations. I believe this is number 4. Catapulting Commissions family, you know what to do. At this point, go ahead and like, subscribe, and comment. Let me know your feedback for Trust Science. Let me know your thoughts for Evan. And if you are that unicorn, if you know that unicorn, drop us a link. Let us know. We'd love to facilitate that introduction. I will see all of you next week. Thanks again, and have a good day.